I think everybody wants to increase their net worth, but frankly, they don't have a blueprint. They don't know how to get there. They're stumbling and fumbling and trying to find their way on how to make more cash. And my guest today, Aaron West of the West Experience, is a master at net worth. My name is Erik Hatch of Hatch Realty and Hatch Coaching, brokered by Real. We are out of Fargo, North Dakota. Yep, people even live in Fargo, North Dakota. And wouldn't you know, I have tried to learn from my buddy Aaron for the last couple of years. In fact, the first time I ever met Aaron, maybe 10 minutes into the conversation, this guy's like, "Hey man, what's your net worth?" And I'm like, that's like somebody asking my weight, like we don't talk about that, dude. And immediately I went back to my calculator. I'm like, what is my net worth? I don't even know. And now it's a regular part of our conversation in life. And Aaron, I have so much to learn from you. I'm so glad you're here, man. Thanks for joining us.
I'm so honored to be here. Yeah, it is kind of funny. You did give me that deer in the headlights look when I asked that, for sure. As do most people.
Let's talk about religion, politics, COVID, net worth, and weight.
You forgot sex. You forgot sex.
Yes, that too. Wow. Okay. Thanks for going there right away. We're there, everybody. I love it. Aaron, before we dive into all the details, let's find out who you are. How did you get such a handsome haircut? Tell me about your awesome wife and boys and business and all the things that really matter.
Yeah, so my name is Aaron West. I have a team based out of Modesto, California. So we're about an hour south of Sacramento and an hour east of San Francisco, smack dab in farm country, where 98% of the almonds in the world are in the Central Valley of California. I have a beautiful wife. I definitely married up. We've been married almost 23 years now. I have two boys that are 19 and 17. So there is light at the end of the tunnel for this phase of fathership, but they are awesome boys. My team is amazing. I got out of production last year, so we have a team of 8, and we did about $85 million worth of volume last year and just under 200 transactions last year. So just a good, solid group they're all absolute rock stars. It's a lot of fun to have the business right now.
Well, Aaron, what I've appreciated about you is always your generous spirit and your generous heart. And yet your mind, your heart is pure and great, but your mind works differently than mine does. And you're constantly looking at things. I imagine A Beautiful Mind, right? That movie where he's seeing all these equations all the time. But I'm going to relate you more to Rain Man, of somebody who just counts a bunch of things. But nonetheless, Aaron, you have this mind that's constantly in the numbers. Why and how did this all come to be?
I think it kind of goes back to, and just to kind of start at the very beginning, was my relationship with money. I had a horrible relationship with money. I was the classic spender. So I spent the majority of my adult life out earning my spending. When I started with my previous career before real estate, I made $13,000 a year and I was broke. And when I left in 2005, making $125,000 a year, I was just as broke. And so I think that part of it is one of my mentors asked me a question, and he said, "What's your dad's relationship with money?" That I had never really thought about how our parental influences and the influences when we are younger affect our viewpoints on so many different things. I mean, marriage, money, politics, all of those things have a huge influence from those that raised us. And so I was really fortunate to have been surrounded by some other really great business people with whom money was a conversation that they were willing to have. I mean, the first time I checked my net worth, I was negative $70,000. I owed the IRS $70,000 and had virtually nothing to speak of, no money at all.
Yep.
But because I was really, surrounded by these people who were okay with having this conversation, and it became part of our just dialogue of our discussions, then my brain started to change, and I started to be a lot more open to the opportunities to build the net worth. And then just over time, because I've been doing it for so many years, and you said it right at the very beginning, and I always say this, the 3 things people don't talk about when they go out to dinner with their friends is sex, money, and politics, right? And most of the time you'll talk about politics, then sex, before you talk about money. And what I found is that money, when you talk to wealthy people, money has no emotional attachment to it. Whereas I know that for myself, and I still struggle with this, and I think so many of us do, there's an emotional attachment to money in one way or another. And so I've become really comfortable just asking people that question.
Don't you think we tie our value to the money that we have and our
Oh,
actual worth? I mean,
so
even the name net worth is interesting because, well, if I don't have a large net worth, am I worth much? How would you address somebody that maybe has that mindset?
I think self-worth and net worth are two totally different items, right? Net worth is, so there's a difference between being poor and being broke. And I've been both to a really, really high level, right? I think broke is a state of account, poor is a state of mind. And I think that most people associate that state of account with their worth instead of it just being their state of account. And so, it's anyway, that did that answer your question?
Yeah, very much so.
So, I think that it is, for most of us, the average or the median net worth of somebody under 35 right now is $13,000. The
Okay,
average.
okay. Let me make sure people heard that. I'm looking at the list of attendees that are watching live, and a lot of people are going to watch the replay of this. But those that are attending live, I have 3 of my ISAs that are on here, and they're all under the age of 35. And you said the median net worth of
The
debt to actual like value that you have, like
assets, yes.
yeah, debt to assets. Taking that is $13,000 for under 35.
$13,000. So
Wow.
the average is 78. So you have some people obviously in that age group that have made more money, but when you actually take the median of it, it's 13,000, and even average is 78,000 for anybody under the age of 35. So as a society, it's something that nobody talks about really at all. And so it's just been a passion of mine to be able to help people start having that conversation and then putting the tools in place to be able to start building that net worth. Because, and we've all heard the expression, money is the root of all evil, money doesn't grow on trees, all of these different expressions that have a negative connotation to money. But the reality is what the Bible says is not money is at the root of all evil. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. Mm-hmm. So if you're able to have a good relationship with money and build net worth so that the rest of your life is easy, building wealth and focusing on your net worth is a beautiful thing because everything costs money.
I've heard, and I've fought internally as a guy that used to be working for the nonprofit, and I worked for the church, and as a guy that was flat broke and grew up on welfare and all those things, to now somebody that has massive amounts of privilege that I never even dreamt possible. I've heard the statement that money doesn't buy happiness, and I was happy and joy filled when I was broke. Because that was a state of account, right? Now I still think I'm happy and joy filled, regardless of what's in my account. But ultimately, I don't think that money buys happiness, but money buys freedom and resources and time. And those things will help you find some happiness.
And that is 100% the truth. Money doesn't buy happiness. Money makes your ability to have the time to find happiness and to become the person that you want to be all becomes easier when you are financially free. And when you don't even necessarily need to be financially free. You just need to know exactly where you are so that it's not the elephant under the carpet. Because for most of the people on this call, if we went down and just said, what is your net worth? I would guess that a very small percentage of these people actually knew that number. And yet it is the baseball card of life when it comes to the financial side of thing, is knowing your net worth, because it allows you to gauge your and see an actual result of your decision making. If you know your net worth and it's negative 60,000, or if it's 6 million, whatever that number is, if you make good financial decisions, that number improves. If you lead the life that you've always led, the number stays the same. And if you make bad financial decisions, then that number gets lower. And so it just takes a lot of the emotion of money out of it. and it allows you to have a scorecard to be able to see exactly where you are today and then start improving upon that.
Well, we're in an interesting time right now. As we record this, it's the 19th of January, 2022. And we just received statistics that said that inflation was, I've seen both between 7% and almost 10%. And so inflation has been higher in 2021 than it has been in the last couple of decades. And so the conversation of money is being forced to the forefront because we're now at a place in which it feels as though if we're not gaining and actively pursuing, we're losing, aren't we?
I mean, every year, if you have $1,000 at January 1 and we're at 7% inflation, on December 31st, your $1,000 is buying 7% less than what it was buying on January 1. So it's something that we have to figure out how to make sure that we're out earning inflation so that you can go ahead, or that you have assets that are going to stay in pace with inflation so that you can break even. And with, when you start playing the game of net worth and you start looking at things differently, then inflation actually becomes your friend at some point. If you are buying assets that appreciate and you have someone that's paying those off with, let's say rental income and those kinds of things, you're actually beating the spread when you have a mortgage at 3% or 3.5% and inflation is at 7%. You're actually making 3.5% per year on just the spread of the money that you have lent to you. I know that went kind of deep, but I mean, there's so many ways to look at it.
Well, appreciation, I think, makes us all look like geniuses, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it does.
So Aaron, I know we have a nice collective mass that's here to learn and to listen about net worth. I think your story, as you'll unfold it, is going to show when did you start paying attention to it? What did you do to grow it? How do you manage it now? And before we dive in, folks, I want to give you a list of the things that one of my bankers, one of my lenders puts in front of me and challenges me to say, Erik, these are the things that you should watch for in order to calculate all your assets. And Aaron, I want you to add to this, but I think that we have to take assets versus liabilities, and that determines our net worth, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
so
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the easiest thing to start out with is you just need to know what it is. And the easiest way to do it is to take a piece of paper and say, what are my debts? What is my credit card debt? What do I owe on my house? Where are all of the places that I owe money to? And then you just add that number up. And that is your liabilities that you have. And then you say, okay, what are the things that I have that have value? And everything. If you have antiques that your mom gave you, if you have a bike, if you have your car, your home, literally your clothes, what could you sell your clothes for? Everything you own has value to it. And you take and you make a list of all of the things that you have value. If it's a 401k, if it's, if you own a business that could be sold, all of those things have value to them. And you simply add those up in that other column. And then the difference is either a positive net worth or a negative net worth. And like I said, when I first did mine, it was $70,000 to the negative. But
and what year was that, Aaron? And how old were you?
That was 2000. And oh my gosh, it was probably 2009, 2000.
So you were in real estate.
Yes.
As a professional full-time, and your net worth was $70,000 in the hole between debts on cars, debts cars and depreciating debts. And what did you say?
IRS, which is one of the ones us realtors tend to have a good amount of debt too. Yeah. And so it was. And I had the challenge of, I knew how to make money. I was able to build a successful real estate business. I had no idea how to have the disciplines to be able to keep money. And I think most of us that are on this call are in real estate. And as real estate agents, we are at a huge disadvantage for psychologically to building wealth because it's such a feast or famine business, right? I mean, if you are a spender and you get a check for $10,000, your first inclination is, where can I put this and where can I spend it? And if you're a saver and you haven't had a paycheck in 2 months and you get a paycheck of $10,000, all of a sudden that fear of being broke again causes you to put that money into a savings account and then never touch it because you take ownership of it. So I think that as we talk about this net worth and building net worth, one of the things that each of us needs to address is, what is my relationship with money? Morgan Housel wrote this great book called The Psychology of Money, and it has a bunch of different stories in it. But it's really interesting because the man who wrote the book has money issues. He has a fear-based relationship with money. At the end of the book, he talks about what he does with his money. And it's very, very conservative, to the point where he wants to have almost all his money in savings because he's afraid of losing money. So I think that starting out, understanding or trying to understand what your relationship with money is a really important place in this whole net worth building journey. And then knowing what that number is. So in 08, 09, my net worth was zero, less than zero. And I had to start making decisions on, was this serving the Aaron who I wanted to be, right? Because at the end of the day, we want net worth to build so that it gives us the opportunity to be the person who we have the potential to be, right?
Mhm.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I know that if we're going to get comfortable talking about numbers and net worth and money, people are sitting listening being like, is this guy valid? Because in 2008, 2009, you were worth nothing. Aaron, I mean, you were worth a lot because you have better hair than everybody. But other than that, like financially, your net worth was zero. And what's your net worth at today?
So it's just a little over $8 million today.
Yeah, man. Congrats.
So, and that has, and one of the things too about net worth, and Gary Vaynerchuk had this quote on Instagram that I absolutely love. And he said, people want to get rich quick, but life is long, right? And that net worth to get to where I am today is because for the past 10 years, 11 years, I have consistently made the right decision over a long period of time. And what happens is it's called the hockey stick effect. It's true of our real estate businesses. It's true of money, is that there is this long grind of 5 or 6 years of being really intentional about it and starting to feel momentum, and then no momentum. And then money starts to have, and it's called the momentum of money. And then you start seeing this hockey stick of so, my net worth journey is really, most of my net worth in 2014, when I really became intentional about it, I was worth about $700,000. So that in a 7-year period is what the possibilities are if you're intentional about tracking and making the right decisions.
You've more than 11x'd your net worth in that short time period, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, Aaron, what's interesting about this, I got into real estate full time in 2011. I had a negative net worth when I started also. And then as we've come forward, my first year in real estate, 2011, I made $200,000. In my first year, even making 6 figures, I made 200 grand and have continued to make a little bit more, sometimes a lot more each year until where I was this last year. And what's fascinating about it is I'm looking at, as we're talking, I'm looking at my portfolio of the properties I own. And I own a total of 57 doors. And then I'm also flipping some right now that are short-term holds. So I'm not counting those. My long-term holds are 57 doors. And outside of 2 properties in the last 2 years, I haven't bought anything in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did all my work in property purchasing between 2012 and 2017. I bought 55 doors between 2012 and 2017. And there's 2 strategies with this, Aaron. I think that the first strategy is people will take as much leverage as possible and then do the BRRRR method, right? Which is you're refinancing and you're taking your cash out and putting it the next thing. For me, I was scared to death of doing that, of being close to like, man, if something changes, it's going to fall apart. So I said, each of these is going to be a savings account for me.
Mm-hmm.
And as I look, Aaron, just in my property holdings of investments I made intentionally over 5 years, I have $5 million in equity in these doors.
And that's the beautiful thing.
And I haven't touched it in 4 years, Aaron.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about this, Albert Einstein, the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest, right? And so for me, I've bought 1 or 2 properties a year for the past, 11 years now. So, at least that is in my goals. Every year I write down, I'm going to buy one property. And then as this goes, and there's really 2 ways to invest, right? Most of us are realtors. We talk to people, it's either for appreciation or it's for cash flow. So most of the time when people are burring, they're buying for a cash flow, the little bit of cash flow they can get with 0 money down. I've always invested for appreciation because for me, once you have net worth, you can turn that into cash flow at any given time. So I've been really intentional about, most of my properties are California and most in my local market because I'm able to buy value, but it has been a constant and never ending, journey. And, just as a side note, I'm in this group called GoBundance. It's a mastermind. I'm actually in Park City right now looking out at the snow. So I win because I know that my view is better than yours, Eric. But, it's see, now I tangented and totally forgot what I was going to say, but it's
You thought you were talking about GoBundance.
Oh yes. So we do this show, myself and another guy, where we interview entrepreneurs who have gone from a net worth of $1 million to a net worth of at least $10 million. It's called 728. It's just for GoBundance. But one of the things that almost to a person, and we've interviewed 4 guys now worth over 100 million and a lot of guys that are worth in the 50 million price range as far as net worth, is that one of the hardest things to do, especially when you start your wealth building journey, is the shiny object syndrome. There's always somebody who's trying to pull you away and take your money, and there's always opportunities everywhere. But for most of these guys, and I know for you, Eric, and I know for me, real estate was the way that I decided that I was able to build wealth, is an inch wide and a mile deep. And so the more you get distracted, those are just things that prevent you from making the right decisions to be able to build that net worth.
You use the Gary V quote of people want to get rich quick, but life is not quick. Life is long. And I probably butchered that quote, but nonetheless, I think that there is an interesting trend right now, and that's with Web3. Folks, if you aren't familiar with this language, let me give you a very brief recap. Is Web 1 was the introduction of the internet. It was AOL, it was Yahoo, now is dominated by Google. And so that was Web 1. Web 2, social media, started with MySpace and Napster. Now it's iTunes and Facebook, right? And we can put Instagram and TikTok and all that in there as well, but that's Web 2. Web 3, I think, is summarized with probably cryptocurrency and NFTs. And that's where a lot of energy is going. And that's where this get rich quick kind of emotion and feeling is there. Aaron, you're a savvy investor. How much clout and capital are you putting into this Web3 opportunity, which feels like a get rich quick, but also something that's going to be here for forever?
So I do allocate money to crypto and Ethereum and Bitcoin and some of those other ones. And, for a couple of reasons. One, it is a long-term play for me. So I don't care if it goes to 60 and then down to 40 or even down to 20. I'm going to continue to buy because I believe in the technology, and I think that long-term there is going to be a lot of wealth that is going to be built around it. However, with that being said, the only reason that I'm in Bitcoin or any of those places is because I sought out people who knew what they were talking about and had gone way down the rabbit hole, who were able to explain it to me in a way that I understood and that I felt comfortable doing it. Because just throwing money at the wall never makes sense. But I started to understand it. And so I'm making educated decisions into Bitcoin, because even Gary Vee says 99% of NFTs are going to go to zero. And 80% of the NFTs right now are owned. It's that whole Pareto principle. 80% of the NFTs right now are owned by 20% of the people who own NFTs. And the reason for that is because they're playing the big game. They're like hoping that there's another CryptoPunks or Bored Ape and that they get in at the front end of that. But for most people buying those NFTs, you're just buying something that you like. They're not necessarily investments that are going to pay off over the long term, because there's so many of them. It's just like art. You're going to find your Michelangelo and your Picasso, but there's a whole lot of Aaron West finger paintings out there that are going to be worth absolutely zero.
I'm just imagining you finger painting and it's a nice little
It's pretty bad.
uh, I think that it's important that people understand everything you just said is future casting of where it's been. Where we are right now tells us real estate, stock market, investment funds, that sort. That's like the steady Betty. Would you recommend to people, if they're concerned about their net worth, that they're first focusing on that in which feels safe, or should they swing for the fences and go after that which feels sexy?
That is such a great question. And it kind of goes back to truly the best piece of advice that I ever received regarding building wealth. And it was from a mentor of mine who is worth a lot of money right now. And he said, Aaron, he goes, you get rich by hitting base hits. He said, the people that show up, and you're going to find the guys that hit the home runs, but at the end of the day, their time in the league is very, very short because they strike out so often. He said, you look at the people who are in the major leagues for a long period of time, and all they're trying to do is get that ball between the third baseman and the shortstop, or the first and the second baseman. And every once in a while, it'll connect perfectly and it's a double. And every once in a great while, they're swinging for a base hit, and the ball, it's a 98-mile fastball that hits straight on, and it's a home run. But if you want to become wealthy, it's hitting base hits. And starting out, and this was a hard mindset for me, but this is something for people to think about. If you had $1,000 and one of your buddies came to you and said, hey, I need to borrow your $1,000 for 6 months and I'll pay you $100 at the end of 6 months, would you do it?
So yeah, you get the $1,000 back plus another 100.
You get the $1,000 back plus $100. And most people are like, no, why would I do that? That's only $100 on $1,000. That's a 20% return on your money. $100 on 1,000 is 10%. If you get it in 6 months, that's 10% in 6 months. If you double that, that's a 20% return. That's a base hit. That's how you get wealthy, is by finding those good, safe, solid returns. And then you're consistently focusing on just looking for opportunities that give you that. And then every once in a while, my first duplex that I bought was $38,000 for a duplex. I mean, it's worth $300,000 today. When I bought that, our average sales price was $78,000. So I was killing myself to buy that property, and it was a base hit for me. Now it's turned into a home run 11 years later, but I wasn't swinging for a home run. It just turned into one over time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Here's the math I'm going to go to, and then I want to ask you the question, Aaron. If somebody is looking to invest and get started, what should they do? So I'm going to tee you up for that question, but I want to tell you about my investment strategy of what it's been. Is when I looked at investing in real estate, that's where I wanted to create my wealth. I didn't want to buy college funds for my kids. I wanted to stick with the industry that I knew, and I knew real estate. And I was also able to find a foreclosure, which kind of don't exist right now in most markets. Mm-hmm. And so you maybe have to pay retail or close to it on a property. And regardless of that, I was able to pick up a place, and myself and a couple of partners, we put down a total of 30% on the deal. And so we put down 10 grand each. That property, we bought that in 2012, fast forward 10 years, and that property is worth $220,000. And so my $10,000 investment, because some people maybe don't have 30 grand to put down, or 20 grand. So I found some partners, I put down 10 grand. That place is now worth 220, and we owe 30,000 on it. So we have $190,000 in assets, and I turned my $10,000 into $63,333 in 10 years, right? That's a pretty unbelievable return. But here's where it gets real sexy, is my mortgage is going to be paid off in 5 years. And when that mortgage is paid off, now all of a sudden, I'm not making my margin of $500 or $600 a month on that place for the rents, and then you subtract all the bills that you have. I'm only going to have the rent that's going to continue to go up, and then I'm going to have no mortgage to pay. I'll have taxes and insurance and that sort. But my profit margin goes from $600 a month, if everything's good and right, to $1,200 a month. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden now, that next year, not only is the property appreciating still, I'm making so much more margin. So for me, Aaron, I've always said, if I have some money to invest, real estate is the thing that I know, and it's the thing that we're adding 1 million people to our population every year, roughly. It might even be more than that. And the National Association of Home Builders has backed up 5 or 6 or 7 million in total houses that should have been built over the 2010s, but weren't, because there was such a bubble that we had to get through. And so this housing demand is going to continue. And it's the one thing I know, Aaron. It's the one thing I got to stick with. And it's how my kids are going to eat well for the rest of their lives, is because I bought a crappy house back in 2011 and 2012.
Yeah. So a couple things. In answer to your question, I wrote down 3 things, and there's actually four that I want to cover. First of all, money's never the issue, because if you find an opportunity, you can do exactly what you did, Eric, which is partner with somebody, and you don't get all of the glory, but you get a piece that over the course of 10 years has exponentially improved the quality of your life, as the ability to do it on a $10,000 investment, right? So I think that's one of the first things that people need to understand about building wealth, is that it doesn't have to be by yourself. It can be with partners. If I tell people I know all the time, if you find an opportunity, come to me and we'll partner in it, and everybody wins. So money is never the issue when it comes to building wealth if you're looking for opportunities. So you as a person should always be looking for opportunities, and then be willing to go to somebody and share the wealth, because a piece of something is better than all of nothing. So that would be.
And Aaron, you're doing this with your team members, right? You're giving them a chance to invest alongside you.
I'm in escrow right now. We're supposed to be closing in the next couple of days with my operations manager. He's coming. Him and I are partnered on it. And then my listing agent just called me just a couple minutes ago. We're putting an offer together. So our whole team, one of the things that I write in my goals every year, and as a team we do, is that everybody on the team is allowed to put in whatever amount of money they have available to them on a flip or a couple of flips throughout the year. And whatever the return is on that flip, they get that return. So over time, they're able to compound their money. So that's the first thing. The second is how did I start on this wealth building journey? And it goes back to this. Most of us have a fear-based relationship with money. You're either afraid of losing it or you're afraid of having it. And to different extremes, we're all kind of in there. Spenders are afraid of having it, which is where I was. Savers, which is where people glorify, like, oh my God, he's got $100,000 in the bank or whatever that is. They have a total fear-based relationship with money as well. And the secret to building wealth is, instead of having a relationship with money, you have stewardship of money. And what that means is this. If someone gave you $1 million right now, for most of us, and statistically, 95% of people when they inherit or when they win the lottery are broke within 5 years, right? Because their relationship with money is the same relationship as it was when they were broke, so they find their way back to it. So if you had $1 million, you'd go buy a house, a boat, all this other stuff. So a different scenario for you to ponder would be, is if your best friend came to you and said, I have cancer and I'm going to die. My life insurance policy is $1 million and I've got 2 little kids. And I'm going to entrust you with that $1 million for you to make sure that my kids are taken care of for the rest of their life. You're going to respond and act very differently to that $1 million responsibility, right? You're going to have stewardship of that money, and you're going to make decisions on that money that aren't emotional decisions based on how you feel about money. They're the decisions on how are you going to take care of that money so that Jim's kids are going to be good through the rest of their lives, right? So once I kind of understood that, what I personally did is I opened up an account that I literally named, I still have them, Not My Money. And you can go into your account, you can go test savings, checking account, and you can rename them in every single bank out there. And I renamed it Not My Money. And then out of every single check that I got, I started putting money into that account. And I personally made the commitment that I would not make my house payment, no matter how bad it got, before I would touch that money. So that money was not my money. That was for Aaron, who I wanted to be and had the potential to be. And over time, and it took me almost a year before I had enough money to make my first investment. But as that discipline started to go into place and I started seeing that money growing and my life not changing with that money going in there first, then I started going, okay, well, I can put, instead of 5%, I can put 10%. And then I can do $1,000 out of every check. And then I can do $2,000 every check. And I started seeing that momentum of that nut start to build, so that I was able to make that first investment. So I think for people that are just starting out, understanding what you, like I said at the very beginning, understand what your relationship with money is, and then creating some kind of stewardship or fiduciary account for you that has nothing to do with how you feel about money. So if you're a saver and you've got $200,000 in the bank, your next paycheck, instead of that going into savings, put some of it into that Not My Money account. You can still have your savings and have that safety net, but you want to have something that you're looking for opportunities to grow your wealth.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that, Aaron. You said you had 4 things, and I have a question on what you just said, but you said you had 3 or 4 things. I want to make sure you get.
Well, I added a couple of them together. One of them was the Not My Money, that money's not the issue, and partners. And then just understanding what your relationship with money is, and then recognizing that no matter where you are, and I've built wealth. I don't have a bad relationship with money, but I had to go back in and really reconsider my relationship with money when I did my goals this year, because I've never met a piece of real estate that I don't like. So every opportunity that comes up in real estate, I will spend every penny I have to buy that, because my business, I know, is going to continue to do everything. So I went and I reopened Not My Money accounts in all areas of my life, my investments, my personal life, my business life. And I made the commitment that I was building 6 months worth of reserves in each one of those areas. And I was never going to touch them no matter what, because I still need to improve my relationship with money.
Yeah. Yeah. Really good advice. Aaron, I want to know, you talked about the Not My Money account, but I think that there's a number of buckets. Those of you that have read Profit First, it speaks of all these different buckets or spaces. Where do you put your money? Do you have specific buckets? Because I can tell you, here's where I put mine, is I have my operating accounts, and I recommend anybody have 4 months at minimum of operating expenses available in their operating accounts at any given time. So we have our operating account. I have my tax account. I don't have what's called a Not My Money account, but I have my I have my future planning account, right? I literally will budget for my, oh craps, I don't have this figured out yet. And this is kind of my risk taking, my investing money. And so I have a few buckets, but I'm curious, what buckets or what accounts do you have? Of how do you take that $10,000 check you talked about, and how do you proportion it out?
So the first, and I think that you touched on it as well, is you have to have, if you're in real estate, a separate business account from your personal account. So those are your first 2 accounts that you have to have, so that if you get audited, there's not commingling and the IRS takes all of your expenses and says they're your personal ones. So in my business account, I have my business taxes account. I have my regular operating budget account. I have my Not My Money account. I have 4 accounts in my business checking. So I have 4 accounts for my business, and then I have 4 accounts for my personal. I have my a lot of our money I put into our trust account, so that if anything were to happen to Jen and I, it's in that trust account. Then we have a regular checking account, a regular savings account, my Not My Money account, and I have a Not My Money account in my investment or in my business account as well. So I try and create as many as I can. And then in my investment account, it's the same thing. I have, a checking account, and then I have a Not My Money account, which is basically my savings account on the business side of things as well.
Yeah. I have a question from one of our watchers right now. So Gus, we're going to get to that in a second. Aaron, I want to ask this. Obviously, a guy with a high net worth of 8 million plus, and congratulations on that. That's pretty special. To be at that, what are you insuring yourself for? Life insurance? Are you doing whole or term or both?
I've always been a term life insurance guy. At some point, I may go to whole, just because it's a place that you can get some tax benefits from doing it. But I've been a term guy, and we've always been to be able to pay off all of our debt. So right now we are carrying about $2.5 million worth of debt. So I have about $4 million worth of life insurance on me, so that Jen's net worth would actually be, 10 or 11 or $12 million, because it would get rid of all of that debt.
Mm.
And then she would have an operating budget to be able to work from, as well as the income now from all of our properties that we've had that would have zero debt on them at all. So she would have a lot of cash flowing assets.
Uh, Folks, if you break that down, you should have enough life insurance to cover all your debt at minimum.
If you have assets. If you don't have assets, we had $4 million worth of life insurance policy when we were worth zero, because I was like, I'm not going to die and have my wife have nothing, right? So once you have assets, you can play a different game. And at the end of the day, it's just math. That's all everything we're talking about is just math. And it's just separating yourself.
You're taking the emotion out of all this, and that's rare air for people.
It's hard to do.
Yeah. Gus asks a great question here. He talks about how fell into some tough times and was in some dark places financially, deep into debt, mostly out of that. Congratulations, Gus. But his credit needs significant improvement. Any advice on getting started, or just ride it out until his credit improves?
Well, it's, again, if it takes you a year to get yourself out of significant credit debt, or credit issues, which for most people, 6 months to a year is what it takes. It took me a year to put enough money together to start my first investment. So if you're diligent about making the decision, understand that you're playing a long-term game, then whatever time it takes for you to take care of that debt, in my opinion, you can also be putting money away and creating opportunities. And then, one of the things that for all of us that are listening on this call, or that will be listening later, is that we don't open our minds for opportunities. There are opportunities everywhere that you haven't told your brain that you're looking for. And when you put pen to paper and say, I'm looking for a house to buy, your brain now is going to hear a conversation 2 people down where the guy is saying, oh, my grandfather died and we're just trying to get rid of this place. And it's not hearing it today because you haven't told it it's important. So if building net worth is something that you want to be intentional about, tell your brain that you're looking for opportunities, and you will be surprised at the opportunities that present themselves to you seemingly out of the blue, because your brain is now listening and looking for opportunities to do those things.
I think one of the pieces is to take money conversations out from the shadows and to bring it to the light, to the forefront. As an example, I have a buddy I golf with, and he and I spend 3 or 4 hours on the golf course, and we talk about all sorts of things, but money tends to be the center of our conversation. I introduced him to Real, the brokerage I'm at, and I'm like, dude, I think this stock is going to grow. Now, since he's invested in the last 5 months, the stock's grown 60%, and he thinks I'm a hero, right? In addition, he introduced me to a friend that now got me into some storage garages. So now I'm investing in some storage garages that should have a massive opportunity to grow and go on a huge accord. And so simply by us having conversations about money and talking about what our goals are, we're now taking the brilliance of what he knows, hopefully the brilliance of what I know, and we're just riding the coattails of somebody who already has vested it and shown that it works. So I think that your ability to talk about it and manifest it and to put it out there is going to be so imperative, because those things will find you.
And the thing that I think holds people back from having real conversations is, well, let me, and I'll just ask a rhetorical question. Would you love to have a conversation with money that was just a real conversation about opportunity for all the people listening? And I know for most people, the answer is probably yes. So do all of your friends. So do all, people think that, because you're wealthy, you don't want to, there's this better than or less than, right? So if you meet somebody that's worth millions of dollars, you feel I'm less than them. But the reality is that they were where you were at some point, and somebody helped them pull that up. And because money is just a number, I don't care if someone's worth negative $250,000. If they're willing to have a conversation with me, I want to learn what their experience is, and then be able to share the information that other people have poured into me. You would be really surprised at how many people are truly open to having a conversation about money, just like Erik and I were when I said, what's your net worth? And he made up a total number because he had no idea what it was. And a couple weeks later, he was like, you know what? I went back and figured my net worth, and it's a little bit different than the number I gave you. Yeah. But since then, I can tell you from our conversations, because we have a weekly meeting call that me and him and a couple other amazing guys get on, that because this conversation and him tracking it, he's making different decisions about what he's doing with his money, because most of us associate wealth with how much we have in our bank account. And that's the last thing that wealth is about, is how much money you have in your bank account.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the bank account is not reflective of. I think that I have 2 points I want to make, and then Aaron, I'll look for you to wrap up with some things. Number one is, if you want to get wealthier than you are right now, I want you to pay equal amount of attention to what you're spending, as opposed to in correlation to what you're bringing in. Oftentimes in real estate, we say, well, how do we get wealthy? Is we spend, or we sell more, or we spend less. There's actually a third piece on that, and that's to find some efficiencies. Those are some fees that you charge, or some commissions that you collect, or you work on some conversion pieces. And so if you're trying to focus on your net worth, I think that you can try to make more, certainly spend less, but there's some efficiencies that you need to be aware of as well there. And that is things like interest rates. And I just refinanced all my rental properties because of course there was that financial move of, now all of a sudden I'm going to appreciate that much more. So that's my first piece that I want to leave with you, is to pay attention to how much you're making as well as how much you're spending. The second piece is, I think that you need to stop hiding your conversations about money and get really crystal clear with it, and find some accountability buddies for that. Some people that will challenge you and talk to you about money, that you're sharing spreadsheets and you're talking about things. We were in Mexico last week for our Hatch Mastermind, and we had a guy named Leo Pareja, who used to be the top agent in the world for Keller Williams, gone on to, now a hard money lender and making crazy money doing that. But he also just sold a company called Remine. And Remine, some of you will know, it's a pretty big player in real estate. And we were talking to him about business valuations. And I think that we sometimes have a misunderstanding of what our business is actually worth. In 2006, 2007, if you were to sell your real estate team that made $500,000 net profit in a year, you get a 5 or 6x return on that. And you get $2 or $3 million if you sold it. Then it's like you couldn't pay anybody to take your real estate team for a while. And now it's probably pretty close to a dollar for dollar for a team or a brokerage. And that number may start to change and shift. But if your team makes $500,000 a year, you can probably value that at anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million, according to Leo. If you have something that has subscription-based pieces, that has a recurring revenue, and people that are not necessarily transacting on a daily, but they're subscribing on a monthly, you can, and that's the tech business in general, you can add a massive multiple to that. That's far beyond what I just said of an actual real estate team or brokerage. So know that should be factored in as you're figuring out your net worth as well.
Yeah, I gave my personal business a 1x until really this year, when I stepped out of production, and it truly became a business that wasn't reliant on me at all. And then I gave it a 2x on my net income. So, and I know of people that have sold for 3 and 4x on their business, but they're true businesses. For most of us, whatever your net is, if you're an agent or you have a small team and you're still in production, you should give yourself about a 1x on your income. So, and then, coming back to what you said at the very beginning, I think budget is a word that is much maligned, and I hate it. True. I'm one of the people that hate the word also, because I'm not a numbers guy. And when I think of the word budget, I think of tightening the belt, eliminating everything that you can to just live on boiled, socks and lentil soup. And so what we did, and I think I would encourage this for everybody, and if you listen to Tom Ferry when he talks about building wealth, or any of these other guys, if you can put yourself on a salary. So if you have a good business, or you have a business with some stability on it, what my wife and I did is we said, what is the dollar amount that we could live on every single year and be comfortable? So we're still able to do, and the business takes care of some of our expenses. I mean, that's one of the benefits of being in business. But what is the number that we can live on? And then that becomes our salary. And I'm a W-2 employee of my business. I literally get a paycheck on the 1st and the 15th. My wife gets one on the 15th. And we've lived on that salary for the last 6 years. Every single penny that my business makes that is above our salary, I now consider not my money, that is used for investing. So for those of you that really want, the best book ever written on building wealth is The Richest Man in Babylon. It was written in 1935. It's a parable about a guy in Nebuchadnezzar's time, and there are 10 principles to building wealth. And principles don't change, tactics do. So the principles that are in this book are the same principles that if you talk to virtually any wealthy person, they live by these principles for the most part. I mean, there's always exceptions. So if you want to start your journey, that is one of the best books ever written. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a super easy read, but it will truly change your life if you put it into play.
Beautiful thoughts, Aaron. I'm going to wrap with this, then I'm going to give you the last words here. Folks that are watching live, thank you for being with us. Folks watching the recording, we have calls of action for all of you. Next week, in just 6 little days, so on the 25th of January, we're doing another webinar. I have my buddy Andrew Abernathy that's going to be joining. This wonder kid is 26 or 27 years old, and he is worth currently $25 million. He's going to be the first billionaire I know personally. There's no doubt about it, because he has a relationship with money and a focus on it that is unparalleled. And so we're doing a series here. We have Aaron talking about net worth this week. We have Andrew talking about how to get to 25 million and beyond with 3 simple steps. And so be sure to tune into that. Also, we are launching a boot camp. We're doing these boot camps every 6 weeks or so, this boot camp on how to grow a team exceptionally well, because your team can afford you not only the wealth, but the opportunity to go and to grow your wealth and your net worth, and to build this for other people as well. The greatest gift and the greatest joy I have is helping other people to have even a taste of what God has afforded me. And so this is your chance also to do that. And so please consider signing up for this boot camp. It's a 4-week series. We're going to go live for 4 solid weeks, and we're going to bring inherent value to all of you and give you some blueprints on how to be successful. Finally, we're going to send out an email when this is done. On this email will be the things I'm talking about, as well as a discount to our marketplace if there's some products that you're looking for. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we post all of this content after it is live. Aaron, give us a final takeaway or a final thing that we need to know about net worth.
So one of my son's teachers, I sat down with him and had this conversation with him, and he has never made more than $47,000 a year, and he's worth $800,000. So becoming wealthy is something that every single one of you can do with 100% certainty. It's just a matter of making the right decisions for an extended period of time. So, like Erik said, I've had so many people pour themselves into me. Helping people build wealth is truly a passion of mine. And I think that's one of the reasons that I appreciate Erik having me on the show, because it allows me to share some of the things that people have told me that changed my life. So if you want to find me, it's theaaron.west, AARON.west on Instagram. And we really are starting to transition to doing some more things with talking to people about their relationship with money, building wealth, those kinds of things. So follow me, and I'd love to pass this on to you and help you guys with on your journey.
Aaron also has a great TikTok channel as well, where he's putting a lot of this content out there. So you can learn horrible white man dance moves by Aaron West, as well as some financial tips. So appreciate you, buddy.
Appreciate you too, man. Have a great day.
All right. God bless you, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.